Marcus Caldwell stood in the marble lobby of Caldwell Tower, his fingers drumming against the sleek surface of his titanium briefcase. At 52, he'd built an empire that stretched across 3 continents: tech infrastructure, real estate, and most recently, a groundbreaking AI platform that promised to revolutionize global commerce. Today was the day. In exactly 4 hours, representatives from the Hanover Consortium would arrive to finalize a $1.2 billion acquisition deal that would cement his legacy as one of the greatest tech moguls of the century. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Mr. Caldwell, your car is ready for the downtown meeting. His assistant Jeremy announced through the lobby's ambient speaker system. Marcus adjusted his Patek Philippe watch, a habit when he was calculating risks. The morning had been meticulously planned down to the minute. First, the preliminary meeting with his legal team at Morrison & Associates. Then lunch with Senator Patricia Greenfield, who'd been instrumental in navigating the regulatory maze. Finally, the grand finale at the Regency Hotel's Diamond Ballroom, where champagne would flow and contracts would be signed. Nothing could go wrong. He'd ensured it. The elevator chimed, and Rosa Martinez stepped out, pushing a cleaning cart loaded with supplies. She was in her early 40s, with kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled, and hands that showed years of hard work. Rosa had been part of Caldwell Tower's cleaning staff for 6 years, arriving before dawn and leaving after dusk, invisible to most of the building's elite occupants. "Good morning, Mr. Caldwell," she said warmly, moving her cart to the side. Marcus barely glanced up from his phone, where emails pinged with updates about the deal. He gave a curt nod, acknowledgement without engagement, the way he treated most service staff. They were part of the infrastructure, like the elevator or the climate control system. Rosa had learned not to expect more. She'd raised her daughter Sophia alone since her husband died in a construction accident 8 years ago. Every dollar mattered. Every shift counted. Sophia was now 14, brilliant beyond measure, and had just been accepted into the prestigious Westmont Academy Summer Science Program. It was an opportunity that could change everything: scholarships, university prospects, a future Rosa had only dreamed of. But today, Sophia was sick. Nothing serious, just a stomach bug, but enough that Rosa couldn't leave her home alone. Her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who usually helped in emergencies, was visiting family in California. Rosa had called everyone she knew. No one was available. She'd made a decision that morning, one that twisted her stomach with anxiety. She'd brought Sophia to work, setting her up in the small staff break room on the 3rd floor with blankets, water, and strict instructions to stay quiet and rest. It was against building policy. Rosa knew that. But she also knew that missing today's shift meant losing a day's pay she desperately needed for Sophia's program fees. Marcus was halfway to the revolving doors when his phone buzzed. It was Diane Foster, his chief legal counsel. "Marcus, we have a situation." Her voice was tight. "The Hanover people want to tour the building before the signing. They're concerned about corporate culture and workplace environment. Apparently, their CEO read some article about authentic leadership and wants to see how we treat our people." Marcus stopped walking. "You're joking. I wish I were. They'll be here in 90 minutes. Make sure everything looks perfect. Happy employees, smooth operations, the whole theater." He ended the call and pivoted, his mind already recalibrating. This wasn't in the plan, but Marcus Caldwell didn't get where he was by panicking over surprises. He'd built this tower, this empire, on the principle that everything could be controlled, managed, optimized. "Jeremy, initiate Protocol Pinnacle," he said into his phone. It was his code for making the building look like a Fortune 500 dream factory. "I want smiles, I want energy, I want this place looking like a tech utopia in 90 minutes. Throughout the tower, managers received alerts. Coffee stations were restocked. Conference rooms were polished. Employees were briefed to look engaged and enthusiastic. The machine hummed to life. Marcus took the elevator to his penthouse office on the 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city that stretched to the harbor. He'd bought the naming rights to 3 buildings visible from this vantage point. Power had a view, and this was his. His mind ran through potential problems. The Hanover Consortium's CEO, Wilhelm von Strauss, was known for his unconventional approach. The man had started as a factory worker in Munich and never forgot it. He'd torpedoed deals over ethical concerns that other billionaires would laugh off. Marcus found it theatrical, but von Strauss's money was very real. Everything must be perfect, Marcus muttered, looking at his reflection in the window. His silver hair was immaculate, his Tom Ford suit without a wrinkle. He was control personified. What Marcus didn't know was that on the 3rd floor, Sophia Martinez had woken from her nap, feeling much better. The 14-year-old was restless, bored of the small break room. She'd finished her book, scrolled through her phone, and was now curious about the building her mother worked in every day. Sophia slipped out of the break room, her sneakers silent on the polished floor. She wasn't trying to cause trouble. She just wanted to explore a little, maybe find her mom and let her know she was feeling better. The building was fascinating. All glass and steel and important-looking people rushing past. She wandered toward the main lobby, drawn by the massive windows and the impressive fountain she'd heard her mother describe. As she walked, she passed offices where people typed frantically, conference rooms with serious meetings, and hallways lined with abstract art that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. Sophia didn't realize she was breaking a rule. She didn't know about Protocol Pinnacle or billion-dollar deals, or the carefully orchestrated image being constructed at that very moment. She was just a kid, curious and innocent, walking through a building. In his office, Marcus received a message from building security. Unidentified minor on 3rd floor, moving toward main lobby. Checking credentials now. His jaw tightened. An unidentified person, today of all days, when everything needed to be flawless. He grabbed his phone and headed for the elevator. Whatever this was, he'd handle it personally and immediately. The elevator descended, and Marcus's mind was already formulating the solution. Remove the problem, restore order, proceed with the plan. It was simple mathematics. He didn't know that in the next few minutes his carefully constructed empire would begin to crumble. He didn't know that the girl he was about to confront would be the catalyst for the most expensive mistake of his life. The elevator chimed at the 3rd floor, and Marcus Caldwell stepped out, ready to eliminate whatever threat had emerged to his perfect day. Sophia was just rounding the corner, her eyes wide with wonder at the building's grandeur, completely unaware of the storm about to break. Marcus Caldwell's Italian leather shoes clicked against the polished floor as he approached the girl. She couldn't have been more than 14, wearing faded jeans and a hoodie that had seen better days. Her sneakers were scuffed, her backpack decorated with patches of various science fiction shows. She stood in front of the abstract sculpture in the 3rd floor atrium, tilting her head as if trying to decode its meaning. "Excuse me," Marcus's voice cut through the ambient music, piped through the building's sound system. "This is a private office building. You can't be here." Sophia turned, startled. Up close, Marcus could see she had her mother's kind eyes, though he didn't make that connection. He only saw an unauthorized presence, a variable that didn't belong in his equation. "I'm sorry, sir. My mom works here and I was looking for her," Sophia explained, her voice polite but uncertain. "Your mother works here?" Marcus glanced at his watch. 73 minutes until the Hanover team arrived. "What's her name?" "Rosa Martinez. She's on the cleaning staff." Marcus's expression hardened. A cleaning woman had brought her child to work. This was exactly the kind of liability that could derail everything. He pulled out his phone and typed a quick message to Jeremy. "Find Rosa Martinez. 3rd floor. Now." "You need to leave immediately," Marcus said, his tone brooking no argument. "This building has strict security protocols. Your mother should know better than to bring unauthorized individuals onto the premises." Sophia's face flushed. She wasn't used to being spoken to like she was a problem to be solved. "I'm not unauthorized." Your mom doesn't have the authority to grant building access to family members," Marcus interrupted. "Security policies exist for a reason. What if you were injured? What if you accessed confidential information? There are liability issues, insurance complications, regulatory concerns." He was listing problems now, each one a bullet point in the case he was building. Marcus Caldwell didn't just make decisions. He constructed logical frameworks that made his decisions inevitable. The elevator opened, and Rosa emerged, her face pale with worry. She'd received an urgent page from Jeremy and knew immediately what had happened. Sophia must have left the break room. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm so sorry." Rosa rushed forward, positioning herself between Marcus and her daughter. "Sophia was sick this morning, and I had no one to watch her. I didn't have a choice. She was supposed to stay in the break room. This won't happen again." Marcus turned his full attention to Rosa, and she felt the weight of his scrutiny like a physical force. This was a man who evaluated everything in terms of cost-benefit analysis, and right now she was registering as pure cost. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Mrs. Martinez, you violated building policy by bringing an unauthorized minor into a secured facility," Marcus said, his voice clinical. "During business hours, no less. Do you understand the position this puts the company in?" Rosa's hands trembled slightly, but she kept her voice steady. "I do, sir. But my daughter has a fever, and I couldn't afford to miss work today. The payment for her summer program is due, and your personal financial situation isn't relevant to building security protocols." Marcus cut her off. He wasn't being cruel in his mind. He was being efficient. Emotions cluttered decisions. "Jeremy, call security. I want them to escort this girl off the premises immediately. Mrs. Martinez, you'll receive a formal written warning. Another violation will result in termination." Sophia felt tears prickling her eyes, not from fear but from the injustice of it all. Her mother worked herself to exhaustion for people who didn't even see her. And now, because Sophia had been curious, because she'd wanted to see where her mom spent most of her life, she was being treated like a criminal. "Please." "Mr. Caldwell," Rosa's voice cracked slightly. "Don't call security. I'll take her home right now. I'll make up the hours. Just please. She's a good kid. She didn't mean any harm." Marcus looked at his watch again. 70 minutes. The Hanover team would be here soon, and he couldn't have this scene playing out in the building. But more than that, he needed to establish a clear line. Rules existed for order. Break the rules, face the consequences. It was simple. "Security is already on their way," Marcus said. "Your daughter will be escorted out, and you'll return to your duties. We'll discuss your employment status after my meetings conclude today." That was when Sophia spoke up, her voice stronger than before. "My mom is the hardest working person I know. She's here before anyone else and leaves after everyone's gone. She cleans up after people who don't even say thank you. And the one time she needs to bring me because I was sick and she had no other option, you're treating her like she committed a crime." Marcus's eyebrow arched. He wasn't accustomed to being challenged, especially not by teenagers in hoodies. "Young lady, this isn't about your mother's work ethic. It's about protocol and liability. Emotions don't factor into risk management." "Maybe they should," Sophia shot back. "Maybe if you saw people as actual human beings instead of liabilities, you'd understand why my mom had to make this choice." The elevator chimed, and 2 security guards stepped out. Trevor and Marcus, coincidentally sharing the billionaire's first name, though everyone called him Mark to avoid confusion. They were professional, polite, but firm. "Mr. Caldwell, you called for an escort?" Trevor asked. Marcus nodded toward Sophia. "This minor needs to be removed from the building. Make sure she leaves through the service entrance, not the main lobby." Rosa felt something break inside her. The service entrance, like they were trash to be disposed of discreetly. She'd spent 6 years being invisible in this building, and now she was being erased entirely. "Come on, sweetheart," Rosa said quietly to Sophia, taking her hand. "Let's go." But as they turned to leave with the security guards, Sophia looked back at Marcus Caldwell. "I hope whatever meeting you're protecting is worth it," she said. "Because treating people like this, that's the real liability." Marcus dismissed the comment with a mental wave. Children didn't understand business. They lived in a world of feelings and fairness, concepts that had no place in the machinery of empire building. He pulled out his phone and texted Jeremy, "Situation handled. Proceed with Pinnacle Protocol. Nothing disrupts the Hanover meeting." As the elevator doors closed on Rosa, Sophia, and the security guards, Marcus allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Problem identified, problem solved. His building was secure, his timeline intact, his deal safe. He returned to the elevator, ascending back to his office. Through the glass walls, he could see his employees performing their choreographed routine of productivity. Everything was falling into place. What Marcus didn't see was the smartphone in Trevor's pocket, still recording from when he'd accidentally activated the voice memo function. What he didn't know was that Trevor's sister worked in human resources at the Hanover Consortium. What he couldn't predict was that in the digital age, nothing stays contained. The elevator climbed higher, carrying Marcus back to his ivory tower, completely unaware that his carefully constructed world was already beginning to crack at the foundation. In the lobby below, Rosa walked out through the service entrance with Sophia, her eyes red, but her spine straight. She'd survived worse than this. She'd survived today too, but sometimes survival isn't enough. Sometimes the universe has other plans, and for Marcus Caldwell, those plans were about to unfold in ways his risk management protocols never could have predicted. Marcus settled into the leather chair behind his desk, the city sprawling beneath him like a kingdom under his dominion. His assistant had sent confirmation. The legal team was ready. Senator Greenfield's lunch reservation was confirmed, and the Regency Hotel's Diamond Ballroom was being transformed into a venue worthy of $1 billion handshake. He opened his laptop and reviewed the Hanover Consortium files one more time. Wilhelm von Strauss, the CEO, was an interesting character. Born in a small Bavarian village, worked factory floors for 15 years before his engineering innovations caught the attention of investors. Now he controlled one of Europe's largest investment firms, but unlike most billionaires, von Strauss had maintained an almost obsessive focus on labor practices and corporate ethics. Marcus found it quaint, almost theatrical. In his experience, ethics was simply good public relations. You donated to the right causes, sponsored the right initiatives, and maintained the right image. The substance beneath didn't matter as much as the performance. His phone buzzed. Jeremy's name flashed on the screen. "The Hanover Advance team just arrived," Jeremy reported. "They want to start the building tour in 15 minutes. Von Strauss himself is with them." Marcus frowned. He wasn't supposed to arrive until the signing. Apparently he flew in early. Wanted to see the operation firsthand, unannounced. His words, not mine. This was exactly the kind of unpredictable variable Marcus despised. But he'd built his empire by adapting quickly. "Fine, meet me in the lobby. Make sure every department head is visible and engaged. I want this place humming." He stood, adjusted his tie, and took the private elevator down. The building tour would be simple. Show them the innovation labs, the employee wellness center he'd installed last year, mostly for optics, the collaborative workspaces that made for great promotional photos. Von Strauss would see a modern, forward-thinking company that treated its people well. The narrative would write itself. The lobby was pristine. Employees moved with purpose. Coffee stations were bustling with friendly conversation, and natural light streamed through the massive windows. Marcus had to admit, his team had executed Protocol Pinnacle flawlessly. Wilhelm von Strauss was not what Marcus expected. Instead of the tailored suit and polished appearance Marcus associated with European billionaires, von Strauss wore a simple navy blazer over a chambray shirt. He was in his mid-60s, with weathered hands and sharp eyes that seemed to catalogue everything they encountered. Behind him stood 3 associates, including a woman with auburn hair who was taking notes on a tablet. "Mr. Caldwell." Von Strauss extended his hand. His grip was firm, calloused. "Thank you for accommodating this impromptu visit. I believe you learn more about a company from surprise than from preparation." Marcus smiled, the expression perfectly calibrated. "Transparency is one of our core values. We have nothing to hide." They began the tour on the 2nd floor, moving through the design department where architects and engineers collaborated on holographic displays. Von Strauss asked questions, good questions about work-life balance, employee retention rates, advancement opportunities. Marcus had answers for everything, statistics and anecdotes that painted Caldwell Tower as a utopia of modern employment. On the 5th floor, they visited the Innovation Lab, where a team was developing the AI platform that was central to the acquisition. Von Strauss spent 20 minutes speaking with the lead developer, a brilliant woman named Dr. Yolanda Chen, asking her about resources, creative freedom, and whether she felt her contributions were valued. Marcus watched this interaction carefully. Von Strauss wasn't just touring, he was investigating. Each question peeled back another layer, searching for the truth beneath the polish. They moved to the 8th floor, where the Employee Wellness Center occupied an entire wing. There was a gym, meditation rooms, a cafeteria with a chef who specialized in healthy cuisine. It had cost Marcus $3 million to install, but the return on investment in terms of publicity had been substantial. "Impressive," von Strauss admitted, examining the facilities. "Though I notice most of these amenities are only accessible to salaried employees. What about your hourly workers? Your support staff?" Marcus hadn't expected that question. "Our support staff have access to break rooms and cafeteria vouchers. We provide competitive wages and benefits packages that meet industry standards." "Meet them or exceed them?" Von Strauss's eyes were penetrating. "Exceed in most categories," Marcus replied smoothly. It was technically true. If you cherry-picked the right comparisons, they continued through the building, and with each floor, Marcus felt his confidence return. The tour was going well. His employees were performing beautifully. The facilities spoke for themselves. And von Strauss, despite his probing questions, seemed impressed. By the time they reached the executive floor, Marcus was already planning his remarks for the signing ceremony. Perhaps he'd mention von Strauss's background, draw a parallel between the factory floor and the corporate suite, emphasize their shared commitment to innovation and humanity. "I'd like to see the service areas," von Strauss said suddenly. Marcus paused. "I'm sorry?" "The service areas, where your maintenance staff works, where deliveries are processed, the infrastructure that keeps this tower running. You said transparency was a core value. I'd like to see the parts of the building most tours skip." The woman with auburn hair, Marcus now noticed her name tag read Elise Kaufman, Director of Human Capital, was watching him closely. This wasn't a casual request. This was a test. "Of course," Marcus said, maintaining his composure. "Jeremy, take us to the service levels." Jeremy's expression flickered with concern for just a moment before he recovered. "Right this way." They descended to the 3rd-floor service corridor, an area Marcus himself rarely visited. It was clean, functional, but noticeably less polished than the public spaces. Exposed pipes ran along ceilings. The lighting was fluorescent rather than the ambient LED of the main building, and the walls were painted institutional beige. A maintenance worker named Robert was repairing a faulty circuit panel. He looked up, surprised to see a crowd of executives in his workspace. "Don't mind us," von Strauss said warmly. "Please continue your work. May I ask your name?" "Robert Dawson, sir." The man was uncertain, clearly not trained for Protocol Pinnacle scenarios. "How long have you worked here, Robert?" 8 years next month. "And in those 8 years, have you ever had a conversation with Mr. Caldwell?" Robert glanced at Marcus, then back at von Strauss. The truth was written on his face before he spoke. "No, sir. Can't say I have." Von Strauss nodded, making a note. They continued through the service area, and with each worker they encountered, the same pattern emerged. Years of employment, essential work that kept the building functioning, and virtually no interaction with upper management. Marcus felt a prickle of unease. This wasn't following the script. Von Strauss was supposed to be impressed by the innovation labs and the wellness center, not conducting exit interviews with maintenance staff. They rounded a corner and found themselves near the service entrance. A young security guard, Trevor, was at his station filling out an incident report. "And what do you do here?" Von Strauss asked him. Trevor looked up, his face registering recognition when he saw Marcus. "I'm part of the building's security team, sir. Making sure everyone stays safe. Any incidents today?" Trevor hesitated, his eyes flicking to the incident report. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Surely the guard wouldn't mention the Martinez situation. It was resolved, documented, a minor protocol enforcement that happened in buildings every day. "Nothing major," Trevor said carefully. "Just routine security matters." Von Strauss smiled. "Good to hear." He turned to Marcus. "I think we've seen enough. Shall we head to your office to discuss the finer points of the acquisition?" Relief washed over Marcus. The tour was complete, the test passed. Whatever momentary concern he'd felt was clearly unfounded. They took the elevator back to the 42nd floor, and as the city came into view through the massive windows, Marcus felt his empire solidify once more. Everything was under control. What he didn't know was that in her office at the Hanover Consortium's temporary headquarters downtown, Elise Kaufman had received a text message from her brother Trevor. Attached was an audio file with a timestamp from 45 minutes earlier. She plugged in her earbuds and pressed play, and heard everything. Elise Kaufman sat in the leather chair of her temporary office, the audio file playing through her earbuds for the second time. Her expression remained neutral, professional, but inside she felt a cold fury building. Marcus Caldwell's voice came through crystal clear. "Your personal financial situation isn't relevant to building security protocols." Then Sophia's young voice, trembling but defiant. "My mom is the hardest working person I know. She's here before anyone else and leaves after everyone's gone." And finally, the kicker. "Make sure she leaves through the service entrance, not the main lobby, like garbage to be disposed of discreetly." Elise had spent 20 years in human capital management, working her way up from an entry-level HR position in Munich to director of human capital for one of Europe's most ethical investment firms. She'd seen every type of corporate culture, the good, the bad, and the grotesque. What she'd just heard wasn't the worst she'd encountered, but it was damning in its casual cruelty. Wilhelm von Strauss valued many things in potential acquisitions: innovation, market position, growth potential. But above all else, he valued integrity. He believed that companies reflected their leadership, and leaders who treated their lowest-paid workers as disposable liabilities inevitably created toxic cultures that rotted from within. Elise checked her watch. Von Strauss would be in Caldwell's office now, discussing preliminary terms. She needed to brief him before the conversation went too far. She texted her assistant, "Need to speak with WVS urgently, before any agreements are discussed." The response came quickly. "He's asking for 15 minutes. Says he'll call you when ready." Elise stood and walked to the window. Downtown traffic crawled below, thousands of people moving through their lives, each with their own struggles and stories. Somewhere out there was Rosa Martinez, probably worried about her job, her daughter's program fees, her future in a city that had become increasingly expensive. Her phone rang. Von Strauss's number. "Elise, what's wrong?" His accent was slight, refined by decades of international business, but the concern was genuine. "I need you to listen to something before you sign anything," Elise said. "My brother works security at Caldwell Tower. He accidentally recorded an incident this morning that I think you need to hear." She could hear muffled conversation in the background. Von Strauss was making an excuse to step away from the meeting. "Send it to me, encrypted." Elise transferred the file and waited. The seconds stretched into a minute, then two. She could picture von Strauss in some private corner of that glass tower, listening to the audio, his expression growing darker with each word. When he came back on the line, his voice had changed. The warmth was gone, replaced by something harder. "Is this verified? My brother recorded it accidentally. I can have him provide a sworn statement if needed. The timeline matches. Security logs will show Rosa Martinez and her daughter Sophia being escorted from the building at exactly the time stamped on this recording. Find this woman, Rosa Martinez. I want to speak with her before I return to Caldwell's office. Wilhelm, we're supposed to sign in 3 hours. Then we have 3 hours." His tone left no room for argument. "Find her!" Elise was already opening her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. "I'm accessing the building's employment database now. We have legitimate access through the due diligence agreement." She pulled up Rosa's file. "Rosa Elena Martinez, age 42, employed for 6 years. Home address in the Riverside district. I'm sending you her contact information. Call her. Tell her Wilhelm von Strauss would like to speak with her at her earliest convenience. Offer to send a car. Make it clear she's not in trouble." Elise hesitated. "If Caldwell finds out we're contacting his employee, he won't find out yet. And by the time he does, it won't matter." Von Strauss's voice carried a finality that Elise recognized. The deal was already in jeopardy. Now it was just a question of whether Marcus Caldwell's empire would crumble quickly or catastrophically. "I'll call her now," Elise confirmed. Back in Marcus's office, von Strauss returned with an apologetic smile. "My apologies. Minor emergency in Frankfurt that required my attention." Marcus waved it away. "I understand completely. Now shall we discuss the transition timeline? I've prepared a comprehensive brief on key personnel and operational structures." "Before we proceed," von Strauss said, settling into his chair with deliberate slowness, "I'd like to discuss corporate culture more deeply. You have impressive facilities, cutting-edge technology, but I find myself curious about the human element. The soul of the company, if you will." Marcus smiled, sensing an opportunity. "At Caldwell Industries, we believe our people are our greatest asset. We invest heavily in talent development, competitive compensation, and creating an environment where innovation thrives." "And your support staff? The people we saw in the service corridors? They're part of the same ecosystem. Everyone contributes to the organization's success." Von Strauss leaned forward slightly. "In my experience, Mr. Caldwell, you can judge a man's character by how he treats people who can do nothing for him. The waiter who serves his meal, the janitor who cleans his office, the security guard who holds the door." Marcus felt a flicker of unease, but maintained his composure. "I agree completely. Respect should flow in all directions within an organization." "Good," von Strauss said, standing abruptly. "Then you won't mind if I take another hour to conduct a few more informal conversations with your staff? I find these unscripted interactions often reveal more truth than any presentation deck." Before Marcus could respond, von Strauss's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something shifted in his expression, subtle. But Marcus had spent decades reading people across negotiation tables. "Actually," von Strauss said, "something has come up that requires my attention. Would it be possible to delay our signing ceremony by a few hours? Say 6 o'clock instead of 3? Marcus's internal alarm bells rang louder. "Is there a problem with the deal?" "Not with the deal structure," von Strauss said carefully. "But I've built my reputation on thorough due diligence. I need to verify a few final details before we proceed. You understand, I'm sure. $1 billion requires absolute certainty." What could Marcus say? Pushing back would seem desperate, suspicious. "Of course, 6 o'clock at the Regency. We'll adjust the arrangements." After von Strauss and his team departed, Marcus stood alone in his office, the city stretched below him, and for the first time that day felt genuine concern. Something had shifted. Some variable he hadn't accounted for had entered the equation. He called Jeremy. "I want a complete review of everything that happened in this building today. Every interaction, every incident report, every security log. Something spooked von Strauss, and I need to know what it was." "Right away, sir." Marcus turned back to the window. Somewhere in the reflection, he could almost see the morning scene playing out again. The girl in the hoodie, the mother pleading, his own cold dismissal. But he pushed the image aside. That was hours ago, resolved, documented, irrelevant. He didn't know that across town, a car service was pulling up to a modest apartment building in Riverside. Didn't know that Rosa Martinez was nervously smoothing her hair, wondering why a billionaire wanted to speak with her. Didn't know that his perfect day was about to shatter like the glass walls that surrounded him. In his world of numbers and deals and calculated risks, Marcus Caldwell had forgotten one essential truth: you can't control everything. And the things you can't control are often the things that destroy you. The phone on his desk rang. It was Diane Foster, his legal counsel. "Marcus, we have a problem," she said, and even through the phone he could hear the tension in her voice. "The Hanover team just requested copies of all incident reports from today. Not routine due diligence, specific focus on human resources and security matters. They're invoking Clause 47 of the Due Diligence Agreement, Clause 47, the Verification Clause. The one that gave them access to virtually any internal document they deemed relevant to assessing corporate culture and ethical compliance." Marcus's hand tightened on the phone. "What are they looking for?" "That's what worries me," Diane said. "They already know what they're looking for. They're just building the paper trail to justify backing out." The city below seemed to tilt slightly. Marcus sat down heavily in his chair. After everything he'd built, after years of calculated moves and strategic brilliance, was he really about to lose the biggest deal of his career over a cleaning woman and her daughter? "Find out what they know," Marcus said quietly. "And find out fast. We have until 6 o'clock to fix whatever this is, but some things once broken can't be fixed. Some moments once past can't be reclaimed, and some truths once revealed can't be hidden again." The clock on Marcus's wall ticked forward, each second bringing him closer to a reckoning he didn't yet understand, but was beginning to fear. Rosa Martinez sat in the back of the town car, her hands folded in her lap, trying to comprehend how her day had spiraled from disaster to surreal. The driver had been polite, almost deferential when he arrived at her apartment. "Ms. Martinez, Mr. von Strauss would like to meet with you. It's not about any trouble, he simply wishes to speak with you." Sophia sat beside her, insisting on coming along. "Mom, if this is about what happened, I'm not letting you face it alone." Now they were being escorted into a conference room at the Hanover Consortium's temporary headquarters, a sleek space with minimalist furniture and walls of windows overlooking the harbor. Wilhelm von Strauss stood as they entered, and Rosa was struck by his presence. This wasn't the cold corporate titan she'd imagined. His eyes were kind, weathered by experience. "Ms. Martinez, thank you for coming on such short notice," von Strauss said, gesturing to the chairs. "Please sit. Can I offer you water, coffee?" "Water is fine, thank you," Rosa said, her voice uncertain. Sophia sat close beside her mother, protective. Von Strauss poured 2 glasses from a carafe and sat across from them, not at the head of the table but at the side, creating a conversation rather than an interrogation. "I'll be direct with you because I respect your time. This morning an incident occurred at Caldwell Tower involving you and your daughter. I've heard a recording of that incident, and I'd like to hear your perspective on what happened." Rosa's face paled. "A recording?" Her mind raced through the implications. I brought Sophia to work because she was ill, and I had no childcare. It was against policy, I know. Mr. Caldwell was right to be upset, was he?" Von Strauss's eyebrow arched. "Tell me, Ms. Martinez, in your 6 years of employment at Caldwell Tower, has Mr. Caldwell ever spoken to you before today?" Rosa hesitated, then shook her head. "No, sir. And yet, within moments of meeting you in crisis, he called security to have your daughter removed through the service entrance. Like she was refused to be quietly disposed of." The words hit Rosa like a physical blow. Hearing it stated so plainly, stripped of corporate euphemism, made the humiliation fresh again. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. Sophia's voice cut through the tension. "He didn't even try to understand. He just saw a problem to eliminate. Von Strauss turned his attention to the young girl. You defended your mother. That took courage. She deserves to be defended, Sophia said simply. She works harder than anyone I know, and people like him don't even see her. Von Strauss was quiet for a moment, then pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen and slid it across the table to Rosa. This is your employment record. 6 years, perfect attendance except for 2 sick days. 5 employee recognition awards for going above and beyond. Multiple commendations from various departments for exceptional work. Rosa stared at the screen, surprised. She'd never seen her full employment record compiled like this. You're invisible until you make a mistake, Von Strauss said. Then suddenly you're a liability to be managed. Does that summarize your experience at Caldwell Industries? Rosa wanted to defend the company, to say it wasn't that simple, but the words stuck in her throat because it was exactly that simple. I just needed the job, sir. I have a daughter to raise, and she's been accepted to the Westmont Academy Summer Science Program, Von Strauss said, glancing at papers Elise had prepared. Congratulations. That's a remarkable achievement. Sophia looked surprised. How did you... I did my homework, Von Strauss said with a slight smile. Just as I'm doing my homework on Marcus Caldwell. He turned back to Rosa. Ms. Martinez, I'm considering a very large investment in Caldwell Industries. But I've built my reputation on investing in companies that treat their people with dignity. What you experienced this morning contradicts everything I believe about ethical business. Rosa felt the weight of what he was saying. Her morning confrontation, her moment of fear and humiliation, was somehow connected to a billion-dollar deal. The absurdity of it was almost too much to process. What happens now? Rosa asked quietly. Now, Von Strauss said, standing. I go to a meeting where Mr. Caldwell expects to become substantially wealthier. And I tell him why that won't be happening. The Regency Hotel's Diamond Ballroom had been transformed into a cathedral of corporate success. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across tables set with champagne flutes. A small army of caterers stood ready with hors d'oeuvres. At the front of the room, a podium waited for the speeches that would mark the historic acquisition. Marcus Caldwell arrived at 5:30, impeccably dressed, his game face firmly in place. Whatever had unsettled Von Strauss earlier, Marcus had decided to push through it with sheer force of will and charisma. He'd spent the afternoon having his team scrub every document, prepare responses to potential objections, and craft talking points for any scenario. Diane Foster met him at the entrance, her expression grim. They're already here. Von Strauss brought his full team, including legal counsel. That's either very good or very bad. Let's make sure it's good, Marcus said, striding into the ballroom with the confidence of a man who'd never lost. Von Strauss stood near the windows, looking out at the city's skyline. He turned as Marcus approached, and Marcus extended his hand with a smile calibrated to project warmth and partnership. Wilhelm, the space looks magnificent. I think this is the beginning of something truly transformative for both our organizations. Von Strauss shook his hand, but the grip was perfunctory, professional rather than friendly. Mr. Caldwell, let's speak privately before we begin. They moved to a small antechamber off the main ballroom. Von Strauss closed the door, and the ambient celebration noise faded to a muffled hum. I'm going to be direct, Von Strauss said. I'm withdrawing from the acquisition. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. For a moment, he couldn't process them. I'm sorry, what? The Hanover Consortium will not be acquiring Caldwell Industries. The deal is off, Marcus felt the room tilt. Wilhelm, if this is a negotiation tactic, it's not. Von Strauss's voice was firm, but not unkind. This morning, you had an interaction with one of your employees, a woman named Rosa Martinez and her daughter Sophia. You had them escorted from your building through the service entrance because the girl was unauthorized on the premises. Marcus's blood ran cold. That's what this was about? A minor HR incident? That was a security protocol enforcement. Surely you understand? I understand perfectly, Von Strauss interrupted. I understand that when faced with a hard-working employee in a moment of crisis, your instinct was to treat her as a liability rather than a human being. I understand that you operate a building with two classes of people, those who matter and those who don't. That's not fair, Marcus said, his voice rising slightly. I run a successful company with thousands of employees. One incident doesn't define... It does, though, von Strauss said quietly, because it reveals who you are when you think no one important is watching. Rosa Martinez had worked for you for 6 years. Perfect record. Multiple commendations. You'd never spoken to her once. The first time you did was to have her removed like trash. Marcus felt his carefully constructed arguments crumbling. I was protecting a billion-dollar deal. I had to ensure the building was, and now you've lost that deal, von Strauss said. Because I won't invest in a company led by someone who treats people as disposable. I've spent my career building ethical organizations. I can't in good conscience hand over $1 billion to a man who would humiliate a single mother in front of her daughter to maintain appearances. The reality crashed over Marcus like a wave. This was happening. This was actually happening. Wilhelm, please. We can address any cultural concerns. I'll implement new policies, diversity training, oversight committees. You'll implement them because you got caught, not because you believe in them, von Strauss said. That's the difference between compliance and character. I need leaders with character. Marcus stood in the small room, the celebration he'd planned waiting just beyond the door, and felt his empire fracturing beneath him.
What do you want?
An apology? I'll apologize. I'll rehire the woman with a promotion, a raise. She deserves both those things, regardless of this conversation, von Strauss said. But you can't buy your way out of who you revealed yourself to be today. There was a long silence. Through the door, Marcus could hear champagne corks popping in preparation, glasses clinking in anticipation. None of it would happen now. I need to make the announcement, von Strauss said, moving toward the door. Wait, Marcus said, his voice raw. Just tell me this. If the recording hadn't existed, if you'd never found out, you would have signed. Von Strauss paused, his hand on the door handle. Probably, which is exactly why I'm grateful for the recording. It saved me from making a catastrophic mistake, investing in a company with a hollow foundation. He opened the door and walked back into the ballroom. Marcus followed, numb, watching as von Strauss stepped to the podium. The room fell silent. Expectant faces turned toward the man who was about to reshape Marcus's life. Thank you all for being here, von Strauss began. I'm afraid I have disappointing news. After careful consideration and due diligence, the Hanover Consortium has decided not to proceed with the acquisition of Caldwell Industries. The gasps rippled through the crowd. Marcus saw his board members' faces pale, saw investors pulling out phones, saw his world beginning to dissolve in real time. This decision wasn't made lightly, von Strauss continued. But we've discovered fundamental misalignments in corporate values that we believe would be detrimental to both organizations long-term. Marcus stood at the edge of the ballroom, watching his carefully orchestrated triumph transform into spectacular failure. His phone was already buzzing with calls from board members, investors, journalists. The news would hit social media within minutes, financial markets within hours. He thought about the morning, about Rosa Martinez's frightened face, about her daughter's defiant words. I hope whatever meeting you're protecting is worth it. It hadn't been. Not even close. 3 months later, Rosa Martinez walked into the headquarters of Hanover Consortium's new American division. She'd been offered a position as facilities director, not charity, von Strauss had made clear, but recognition of her years of excellent work and her potential for leadership. Sophia had received a full scholarship to Westmont Academy, funded by an anonymous donation that Rosa suspected came from von Strauss himself. Though he'd never confirmed it, Marcus Caldwell still ran Caldwell Industries, but the company's valuation had dropped by 40%. Several board members had resigned. The incident had become a case study in business schools about the cost of ethical failures. As for Rosa, She walked through her new workplace with her head high, greeted by name by executives and janitors alike, finally visible in a way that had nothing to do with crisis and everything to do with recognition. Sometimes the universe has a sense of justice. Sometimes treating people as disposable comes with a bill that even billionaires can't afford to pay. And sometimes, just sometimes, the invisible people turn out to matter most of all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.